All right, so we've got our area in here that we are, it's going to be our laboratory. And we're going to focus less on setting it completely up to look like a lab. I'm going to get you guys some specific pieces of furniture to lay out in here, not today, but we want to just get rolling with our different spaces. But first, before we do anything else, let's go ahead and put a ceiling in here, okay? So by that I mean, if I go to architecture and I go to ceiling, notice at 9 foot, I've got this 2x2 acoustical ceiling tile system, right? I don't want it at 9 foot, I want it at 8 foot. Why is that? Well, let's go to our section and our section will tell us. Here in section 4, right, which is this section right here, right? I'm looking at this section, section 4. And in here, I'm going to measure where 8 foot gets me to. And let's take a look at that. So I'll come over here and I'll say annotate a line, and from the floor I'm going to go up to the middle of that mullion, and look at that. There's my 8 foot, right? That's 8 foot. So in this particular section, I know 8 foot's going to come right about to there, which is just fine. Your average person is how tall? Your average person is between 5 foot and 6. Well, 5 and 5'6" is where a lot of people fall, okay, in this world. So I'm going to have plenty of headspace in there. I'm not worried about that. And I don't want to make them feel too closed in by the ceiling, but at the same time, I also don't want a 9 foot ceiling somewhere in the middle of here and looking funny in that 3D view, right? So here, let me show you something. Let's put it in there at 9 foot and let's see what we get. So, and then we'll see why we want it at 8 foot. So I'm gonna go to ceiling and I'm gonna let it be in 9 foot. I'm gonna come and hover in this space and look at that. I'm gonna click in that area. It says none of those things are visible in floor plan. I'm gonna go down and go back to that 3D view one and look at that. There's my ceiling. That's not really cool, as far as design is concerned. It's not attractive that now when I go in here, I've got this extra line going across here. Now, I could change the height of these mullions, but what I happen to know is that in a lot of spaces like this, 8 foot is where you want your ceiling for a lot of different reasons, okay? So I'm gonna come in here, and you know what's cool? I can come in here, hover, click, there's my ceiling, and I can change it right down to 8 foot right here, right? And now that's a lot cleaner looking, isn't it? Especially when we go back to section 4, right? So that looks a lot better in that instance. Now I do have a grid under there that I could adjust, right? If I hover and I go tab, 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 up, there's my grid, right? And I could unpin that and move that and then change that to 9 foot, but I'm not gonna do that in this instance. We don't need to. We're okay at 8 foot in there. And so now I'm going to go back to my ground floor. I've got my lab area established, and I also have some corridor established back here. How are we going to, because we know corridor is it's not necessarily wasted space, but it's not exactly space that is what? That is all that usable by us, except for egress. So we'll come back to that thought a little later. Then we'll kind of determine what's going on in this area over here, because we've got something else going on down here that we're going to have to address. And that may answer our question as far as our additional occupancy requirements go. All right. So let's figure out where we are so far. We need to, first of all, we need to have some points of entry of our lab. And the key here is that in a space like this, normally we would go ahead and we would say, okay, it's so big, and because it's so big, we have to have so many exits from it. Remember that? A space's square footage will determine a lot of times the exits that we have to have from there. But what I'm going to tell you is we're going to come in here and we're going to come in and we're going to cut another section through here. Actually, we're just going to borrow this section, right? And we're going to pull this forward. Actually, I'm going to tab and bring this whole thing up. I want to kind of change it. That's a nice thing about sections. We just kind of move them where we need them sometime, right? So I'm going to pull that down and pull that down. And I'm going to go in here and right click and say go to view. And now that I'm in that view, I can see here that here are these panels. What's my distance between those panels? So I'm going to go in here to annotate. And I'm going to just drop a couple of dimensions in here from grid line to grid line. That's 4'5", and again, that's close to 4'5". So you know what I'm going to do here in this lab? I'm going to come in here and click on that mullion. I'm going to unpin it and delete it. And then I'm going to come down here to this mullion, unpin that one and delete it. And I'm going to click here and unpin that mullion and delete it. Right now I have space to do what? If I go into Insert, Load Family, and I come in here, if you remember, if I go to Doors, right? US Imperial, go to Doors, and I'm looking down here. Am I seeing any doors that are going to work in here? Well, how about a double storefront glass door? That'll probably work, won't it? I'll go ahead and hit Open, right? And now, in order to put it in there, I can't put a double storefront. Well, watch what happens if I try and go here and go tab, 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 click to that panel, unpin it, and then I can say, what? Double storefront door. And look what happens when I do that. That door's way, way too skinny, right? I don't want to do that, do I? So in order to make this work, what I want to do is come in here and click on that curtain grid, right? And I want to say what? Add remove segments. And add and remove that segment. Now I have a large panel in here that I can come in and go tab, 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 click. There's my panel already unpinned. I come in and now I can put that double curtain wall door, right? So now I have that nice large door going into my lab. And what I want to make sure of is that door, you know, do we want it to open in or out? We probably want it to open out, okay? For all intents and purposes. We'll have it open out so people that were in there, if they were in a hurry to get out, they could get out. Now, here's something that's interesting. That's awful what? Let's go back here and look how large this is. And I want you to start seeing some of the issues with something like that. If I come in there and I do a dimension, what you're going to see, right? And here are the perils of starting to design in Revit earlier on. If I go here and then I go here, that door is 8 foot wide. Do I really need an 8 foot wide door to get in there? No, I don't. So how can I remedy that? Well, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back a couple of steps and I'm going to back out and I'm going to say, I probably want to come in here and I want to maybe take a mullion like this, right? And I want to create a similar one. Oh, but wait, I can't because I don't have a what? I don't have a line, right? I don't have a grid line. Those are the little things, right? So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to unpin this mullion. I'm going to delete it. And I got this grid line here, right? And what I want to do is say, hey, I want to create, see if I can put a curtain grid in here somewhere. Yeah, I can, maybe if I come over for right now, just a couple of feet, right? See how it put a mullion in there for me? I don't really want it to do that. So I'm going to delete that. And what I'm going to do is also delete that one because that looks silly, right? And so what I'm going to do is come in and now say, I'm going to put an annotated dimension in here from this grid line to this grid line. I'm going to say this door, I'm going to make it 6'6". Not the door, but that grid, okay? So now there's my 6'6" dimension. And on here, now I can go in and go to architecture and what kind of mullion is this? This is a 2.5 by 5 inch rectangular mullion. So I'm going to use the same thing. I'm going to go 2.5 by 5. I'm going to put one here and I'm going to put one here. But what I'm going to do is say, delete that portion of it. And I'm also going to come in here and say, add remove segments of my grid, right? And now with a nice little side light there, I'm going to come and I'm going to hover, tab, tab, tab. Click, and now I'm going to put in that door. And now that probably makes a whole lot more sense. It looks a lot better, and when I go to our plan view, I just come here and say, let's flip it that way. Those doors open out, and I've got my first door located in my lab area. So I'll go ahead and stop the video, and when we pick back up, we'll locate another door in here, and we will also talk about how we're going to label some of these spaces, okay?